Hey guys, Mr. Gibson here. We're going to talk about monospony and and a factor markets. Okay, so we're going to start out with here and talking about the demand for labor or other, and this can apply to other factors of production too, like capital or land or entrepreneurship, even. That'd be a little stranger, but anyway, we're going to focus on labor because it makes it a little easier to comprehend and it's something that we're a little more used to. Okay, so um, I put up here just for simplicity, we're going to pretend like we're a firm who's in a perfectly competitive market. And we're going to have to be clear here between a perfectly competitive market where they're selling their good or service versus a perfectly competitive market, um, labor market. Okay. So in this case, I'm going to show you guys, we're going to end up with both. But anyway, um, so they're in a perfectly competitive market, which means that as they increase production, the price won't adjust. They're price takers. Okay. So let's look at this here. Um, we have labor. This is them increasing a unit of labor. And then this is the production, okay, that each unit of labor gives them, okay, or total production, all right? So we know about marginal product of labor. We can calculate that. I'm actually going to do that real quick. Product of labor. So from 0 to 1, we added 10 units. From 1 to 2, we added 4 units. So that's marginal product of the second piece of labor. Third unit of labor added 3 units. The fourth unit of labor added 2 units. Fifth unit of labor, 1. And because of diminishing returns, we even get the sixth unit of labor um, had a negative number. Okay. Now, when it comes to a labor market, it's very similar to our own markets that we're used to, with the exception of one thing. The demand is a little strange. Okay, and I'll talk to you guys about what that looks like. So here's our labor market. Okay. And this will be the labor market for the firm. All right. And the firm's demand is, of course, how much labor the firm wants or needs. Okay. And it's not like our demand for goods and services. Our demand for goods and services have to do with our taste, our preferences, um, you know, what we like, what we dislike. Whereas a firm, their benefit, their demand is based on how much money, how much revenue they generate from each unit of labor. Okay, so what we're going to calculate is what's called something called the value marginal product of labor. Okay, and what that says is, okay, each unit of labor uh, has a marginal product to it. Okay, how each unit of labor adds something to our production. Okay, and the value that it adds to that production is how much it produces times how much that production's worth. Okay, so in this case, we have our marginal product, and we're going to times it by the price for each unit, and the price for each unit is $2. So when we add 10, when this first person adds 10 um, units of the product, times $2 per product, this worker has added a value marginal product of 20. Okay. Second, 4 times 2 is 8. The third, 3 times 2 is 6. The fourth, 2 times 2 is 4. 1 times 2 is 2. Negative, well, this would actually take money away from you, negative $2. Okay, so it's all in cash. Okay, so the firm demand is based on both the price that it's it's charging for this product, the revenue, the marginal revenue, okay, and times the marginal product, okay. Now, I use value marginal product because this is a perfectly competitive firm. They're price takers. Now, if they weren't a perfectly competitive firm, as they increase production, the value would actually go down. Okay, the revenue would actually go down um, per unit. Okay, it doesn't say the same. They're not price takers in that case. So that's where you get this marginal revenue product. And that's just marginal revenue times marginal product of labor. Okay. But guys, it's the exact same concept. I've used value marginal product, I've used a perfectly competitive market simply to make it easier when we're doing our analysis. Okay. But just kind of wrap your head around that same concept. If we weren't a perfectly competitive firm, then of course our we would look at our marginal revenue rather than just a straight price every time. Guess what? In a perfectly competitive firm, the uh, the price that you have to take is your marginal revenue. So it's actually the same calculation in this case. But I just want to be clear that value marginal product and marginal revenue product very similar, pretty much the same, but you're probably referring to two different markets. So anyway, for simplicity's sake, we're just going to stay with our price taker scenario. Okay. Now, this is where it could get a little confusing, so please do listen here. Okay. This firm, where it's buying and selling its products, is perfectly competitive. And we're going to assume this firm is in a labor market where it's perfectly competitive too. So they are a price taker when it comes to selling their product, and they are just going to have to charge whatever the market wage is. Okay. So in this case, we would have, I'm just going to draw down here, we're going to have some sort of overall labor market for the entire world or whatever market we're looking at. There's some sort of demand that represents the um, that represents the derived demand of all firms. There's a supply of labor, which is based on labor's preference between their work versus leisure decision. And there'll be some market clearing price that will say, okay, this will be the wage that is charged by everybody. Okay. Firms don't really have control over that. So let's say that that's $6. Okay. All right. You can think of this like with fast food. Okay. Unskilled labor, usually uh, kind of identical. But if one fast food place is has a higher wage than all the other fast food places, then people will tend to try to go work at that one versus the other one. So maybe it just kind of settles to a wage that is pretty comparable. Okay. And I think you'd probably find that that's true. Y'all would probably go, well, Chick-fil-A, probably gives a lot higher wage. That might be true. I don't know. But I think if you looked over a bunch of fast food restaurants, it's pretty similar. Okay. So that's what it's saying. All right. Um, Labor market's way more complex than that, of course, but so is everything else. We just have to start with these small examples. So anyway, for our perfectly competitive firm, they're price takers. The labor market's perfectly competitive. This is the supply of labor, which equals what we're going to call the marginal factor cost. So let's think about this real quick. For a perfectly competitive firm, marginal means change. Factor cost means the cost of labor. The marginal factor cost, the change in the cost of labor for each unit of labor that you're employing, well, you're going to have to charge them the same price, okay, the same wage, and you're going to have to be a wage taker because it's just the same wage over the entire world. So the marginal factor cost of each unit of labor is still just $6. You're going to go where the market clears, which of course is this point right here on the graph, okay, that's where your marginal cost equals your marginal benefit being your value marginal product, your marginal cost being your marginal factor cost. And in this case, it looks like, well, your value marginal product is 6 right here. That means you're going to probably hire 3 units of labor. Okay. All right. That's when it's a perfectly competitive um, firm. Okay. A firm in a perfectly competitive labor market. All right. You have to charge the wage that the market gives you. You're not really worried about who you're hiring. You worry about your marginal value marginal product. That's your marginal benefit. Your marginal cost is its marginal factor cost. Okay. That's if you are just a plain old wage taker and your employees themselves are plain old wage takers too. Okay. So I'm going to erase a lot of this. So bear with me. Now, that's if the labor market or the factor market is perfectly competitive. Okay. Now we are going to have to talk about a monospony. And what that is when you have a firm, bear with me for a second, that is no longer perfectly competitive in a labor market. And this is where it gets a little confusing because we're going to have to look a little differently at our marginal factor cost. Okay, so set all this up. Sorry about that. Okay, so what I've added on here is basically our supply. Okay, now before I get into all that, let me make something abundantly clear to us. One, this firm, their market is not going to change. Okay, we're going to assume they're in a perfectly competitive market. Okay, we're going to assume that. And that's just to make our math a little easier. So we can keep this $2 amount and we can just keep this same value marginal product. Okay. What we're going to change is that this firm is no longer in a perfectly competitive labor market. It is now in a labor market that they control. They're the only employer. You could think of this like teaching's a good example. The only employer is public schools. Okay, an example of a firm that might be perfectly competitive and also monospony. You could think of like coal mines in certain towns. Okay, there could be bunches of coal mines. Okay, all around the country, and these coal mines could be cutthroat in their competition between each other. But as far as the town is concerned, that's the only employer in town. So then they have a monospony over labor in that town. Okay. Pretty contrived example, but just to kind of give you an idea that, this market for the goods and services is separate from this market for labor. Okay. Now, let's think about this. In this case, we've got a supply of labor. We can look at each individual piece of labor and see how much we should charge for it. Okay. In this case, one piece of labor, you could hire one person. They would take a wage of $2. If you want to hire a second person, well, you'd have to give them a wage of $3. That's how much they're willing to. That's the wage they're willing to work at. Third person $4, fourth person $5, fifth, sixth is pretty contrived example, very simple. Okay, just to show you guys that if you want to hire more labor, well, you're going to have to raise your wage. Okay, and that's all very well and good because if we could perfectly discriminate here, very similar to monopoly, well, you would hire that first piece of labor at $1 or at $2, excuse me, and then hire the second person at $3 and $4 and so forth. Okay. And you would end up with a supply curve of labor that looks like this. Okay. Upward sloping. Okay. Just means that if we want to hire more labor, we're going to have to raise our wage to attract a new piece of labor. But that's not where the story ends. Okay. Presumably, we're not going to be able to charge labor uh, perfectly discriminate against everyone's wage. Okay. For one thing, we can't go into everybody's mind and figure out, okay, it's going to, it's going to take Jake $2 to get him to work, and then it's going to take Sally $3 wage to work. Okay. Plus, if Sally and Jake are doing the same job, Jake might get a little mad if Sally is getting paid more than him for the same thing. So we're going to end up having to charge the same wage. Okay. Each time. So let's go in this world where we put MFC as marginal factor cost here. Okay. Now, for that first piece of labor, okay, that first piece of labor, it's $2. Okay. We're not even going to consider the zero labor, right? Now, think about this though. To hire that second person, it makes sense. Okay, $1. We have to pay $1 more. But in reality, you're going to have to pay the second piece of labor $1 more and pay the first piece of labor $1 more. So it's actually $2. The third person, okay, you're adding $1, but you're also adding $1 to the first person. So that's $2. And then $2 to the second person, $1, to the first person, $2 more. That's $4. Okay. So to hire that fourth or that third person, it's going to cost you $4 more. Now to hire the fifth person, okay, $1 extra to hire him, extra dollar to hire the third person, $2 extra to hire the second person, and $3 extra to hire the first person. So I think that's $7. Marginal factor cost is $7 more. Okay. Fifth person, okay. Uh, Extra dollar there for the fifth person, extra dollar for the fourth person, $2. Third person, extra $2, $4, extra $3 for the second person. That's $7. Extra $4, that's $11. Marginal factor cost to hire him is going to be $11 extra dollars. Okay. So let's see how this looks. Okay. So if I were this firm, I could perfectly discriminate the marginal factor cost of each one of these people is extra $1. Okay. An extra $1. So you would hire these people all the way up to probably your fifth. Let's see. What's my train of thought here? But anyway, if this market was just competitive and you could perfectly price discriminate and you had this wage clearance and all this good stuff, well, you would probably hire all the way up to the fifth person. Okay. Because the fifth person's marginal value product is $2. You're charging uh, at $2. So, and then the marginal cost to you is only $1 extra versus the sixth person. So presumably we'd be all the way up here at the sixth person or at the fifth person. That would be our kind of market clearing place right here. We'd have to pay that guy $6. Okay. But that's not what's going to happen here. It's not what's going to happen here. Instead, look, the marginal factor cost is $4 and then $7, $4 for the third person, and then $7 for the uh, fourth person. Okay. Well, that means where the market clears here, um, so that first person's adding $20 to you. This second person's adding $8 to you. The third person is adding $6. Well, the third person here is only adding $4 to you. Okay, whereas um, it's costing you $4 extra. The fourth person is gaining $4 more dollars for you. See right here. But now this fourth person is costing you $7 extra. That is a problem. Okay. That is a problem. You're not going to hire him. Okay. And that's because you'd have to raise everyone else's wages. Okay. So to repeat, if there was no marginal factor cost here, if you could just wage discriminate, you'd have the market clearing price of just a regular market. And in this case, you would just look at the marginal value product 27 or 28,642 -2. Each wage is going up by $1 each time. Okay. So then you would hire 5 units of labor because look, that fifth unit of labor is giving you $2 extra and it's only costing you $1 extra. But now, because you have to raise everyone's wages with each person that you hire, you have this higher marginal factor cost. And so this first person gives you $20 extra. Second person gives you $8 extra, but he costs you $2 extra. Third person gives you $6 extra, but costs you $4 extra. The fourth person gives you $4 extra, but costs you 7. So you're going to stop at that third person. Okay. So what happens is this: is rather than having this just nice little uh, linear line right here that's just going up at a convenient pace, we're going to end up with a line that's increasing rapidly. We're end up with a marginal factor cost right here. Okay. We're going to end up with hiring this amount of labor, which in this case would be 3 units of labor. Okay. But you look at the graph and you're thinking, well, Mr. Gibson, it looks like on the graph we would charge this wage up here. But go back to the table. You don't have to charge this wage way up here. Sorry. You get to charge this wage down here. The only wage you got to charge is the wage that that third person would work for. And in this case, the third person would work for a wage of $4. So with this monospony, you're in a situation where a firm hires less labor at a lower wage than the market would entail. Okay. So that's your difference between a monospony and a firm that's in perfect competition for labor. Okay. The firm owns the market, but they're unable to perfectly discriminate in wages that they give. They have to raise the wage of everybody. And because of that, you have this marginal factor cost that's way higher than the supply curve of labor. And in which case, the firm we're going to hire less labor than they would perfectly competitively at a lower wage than they would have perfectly competitively. So a monospony is not a very good situation to be in for a laborer. All right. I hope that helps you guys out understand and think